My name is Zach Batty. I'm with the marketing team here at eLearning Brothers, and we are very excited for today's webinar. This is time-saving tips in Lectora Online, and we will be speaking with Jennie Valley, the community manager for Trivantis. Jennifer, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, and happy to share my tips for Lectora Online and authoring in general.
Perfect. We can't wait. Before we get into that, though, just some housekeeping things. As a reminder, this webinar will be recorded, and so you'll have access to that afterwards. If you have any questions during the webinar, we'll be ready to answer your questions. Please either ask those in the questions panel. If we can't get to those, just kind of answering via text, then Jennifer will take some time throughout the webinar. I might come in and ask a question. We'll get to as many of those as we can. If we don't get to it during the webinar, please keep an eye out for the blog, either the webinar review blog, or if it's maybe a deeper issue, we might just do a blog in and of itself for that question. So we appreciate your patience there. And just so you know, one of the things that we like to do after the webinar is to reach out to you, find out if you have any questions, or if you'd like maybe a one-on-one demo of what we've talked about. Just really touch base and find out if there are any additional needs or questions, and we'll do that after the fact. Also, everyone in attendance will be getting a free license to eLearning Brothers, to our starter pack there. So that's something that you can look forward to. So without further ado, Jennifer, we'll turn the time over to you.
Sounds good. Glad to be here and happy to share any tips and tricks that I have regarding Lectora Online. Been a developer for a little bit of time, so definitely have some things that I can go ahead and share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So you should be seeing the Lectora Online interface with my course that I've created for you. I will be making sure that this file is available on our Trivantis community for you to download if you're interested. So feel free to keep a lookout on that, and it's available at community.trivantis.com. So I'm going to go ahead and just put this into run mode real quick, and we'll go ahead and go through the different tips and tricks that I have for you guys. So of course, welcome. This is in conjunction with eLearning Brothers and Trivantis. We're going to be focusing on Lectora Online, which is why the course has been created in that authoring tool. We're going to first start off with a couple of beginner item things. If you've been in the game for a while, you might be familiar with these, but it's really some things that you need to potentially be doing in your everyday development process if you're not already, because it's just going to help speed up the time that you have when it comes to creating courses and hopefully reduce that down for you. So the first off is going through the storyboard, outline, and prototype process beforehand. And as an instructional designer, most of you are familiar with the tips and techniques related to that. So some of my high-end recommendations is to figure out the who, what, when, where, and why that you're doing your training. Also to make sure that you have SMART objectives, which are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-orientated. Make sure you collect your resources ahead of time, create a folder if necessary, scour the eLearning Brothers stock library or cutout people library, even the templates and themes, to make sure that you have a really good idea of what you're going to be creating. And then to create an outline, so maybe you have a little bit of a idea of the flow that you're planning on doing, and of course that can definitely change as you're going through and learning how to use or how to create your training. There is a free storyboard template that I created, and it's out on the blog. If you want to download that, it will be included in these course files. There's a little link down at the bottom, so feel free to take a look at those. The other really important thing to do is make sure that you're using themes and templates and pre-created items as much as possible. That can really help speed up the time that you're using. For example, I'm currently using the Vibe style of theme available from the eLearning Brothers content. So whenever possible, you're going to want to look for themes, templates, course starters, games, interaction, navigation players, and scenarios that could potentially help speed up that development time that you have within the system. They've got great graphic designers and instructional designers on staff creating this content, so it's something that you can definitely trust. You're also going to want to take into consideration page layouts. Lectora Online does include page layouts pre-created within our system. All you have to do is go into the insert ribbon, and from the page drop-down, there's going to be a whole bunch of layouts available to you. There's also content available through eLearning Brothers. And again, this layout is from Vibe. And one of the things that's really great is that you can actually take the content that's already inside of the layouts or themes and templates and really make it so that they are working to the best of your ability. And you can do that by easily swapping out content. So for example, don't like this picture? Okay, that's fine. Let's go ahead and swap it out. And the second picture is from the Shamrock set from the eLearning Brothers as well. So it makes it really easy. We got a completely different look and feel because we went from kind of a corporate to a more lighter feel in this particular example. So you can really play around with whatever is given to you, and if you don't want to use that, it's really easy to also swap that out if needed. One of the other things to keep in mind potentially is the color that you're using within your course development. Color is both a strong trigger and a simple way to bring a course together. So build a color palette ahead of time. My favorite thing to do is to scour Pinterest. Pinterest has some great examples of different color palettes that you might want to potentially use. There's also tools out on the web available to you as well. And with the emotions that are associated with colors most commonly, you can give your course a very particular look and feel. So for example, red is supposed to give the idea of energy. So if you're really trying to ramp up and get somebody excited about your training, maybe you're creating a teaser to a more larger project, red might be an option for you. Blue is where you want the person to really focus. It gives them a sense of tranquility and also lets them just naturally hone into the content that's being presented on the screen. Green is given a thought of feeling of safety. So if you're creating safety created content, you might want to consider having that theme go into your color palette as well. Yellow is optimism, and that is going to give your course a really great feel to it if you're trying to evoke a certain positive emotion. So for example, really emotionally heavy content might be a good idea to include a yellow palette or at least a secondary color in there. Orange gives the feeling of being social. So if you're trying to promote social learning or maybe even a leaderboard or gamification style, you can really get somebody more amped into completing that thought train by including orange within your template as well. Personal favorite of mine, including why I picked the template that I did, is purple gives the color of power, also known as being associated to royalty. So if you want to empower people to have time-saving tips in Lectora Online, then include a purple type of theme. The next theme or tip that I have is that you think about navigation before you start creating. And in my opinion, navigation goes around in a gamut of starting from linear to nonlinear. Linear being a more old school way of developing maybe, and it's really where when you start getting into developing, there's only the back and next button. Really makes it so that you can only move forward or backwards in one single line. As you get away from that feeling and looking at more of the content that has been coming out as of recently in comparison to in the past, you start seeing the addition of more buttons in your navigation when necessary. So for example, a little bit further away from linear, but moving more towards nonlinear would be your next and back button, then maybe a miscellaneous navigation like home or exit. Moving even further over into the nonlinear, you start adding a menu, which gives your learner the ability to pick and choose whether or not they want to follow along in the order that you've provided or explore your course on their own. You can then even take that even further by including a branching scenario, maybe prompting them to answer a question or a prompt with a button on the screen or something along those lines to move into various different parts of your course depending on their understanding. And then of course you have the completely immersive, no navigation buttons at all. And we see great advances in the e-learning industry as this kind of becomes more of a thought process as to if I'm trying not to get my learner to use the next button, then maybe they'll be more focused on the content that's on my screen. So it allows for you to even become more creative in your instructional design and e-learning development process as well, which for me, speaking just for myself, makes it even more fun, because then you can try and start thinking of ways to incorporate different ideas, such as a car desktop or a navigation unit or a map or a plane ride or something along those lines, that it's not really about clicking the next button, it's about accomplishing something on the page and finding out the excitement that you get by finding out what is on that next page for you. We also would recommend that you take into consideration the naming convention that you have going on in your Title Explorer. The consistent use of naming convention has been proven to increase the amount of time or reduce the amount of time spent in your courses, because you're not trying to struggle to figure out what exactly was this again. And it also helps if you have more than one developer on staff, because you're giving them an insight into your thought process. And really, when it comes to naming convention, you need to stick with a general theme and then agree upon it. If there's more than one of you, you can even write up a standards documentation. And you're going to need to determine, is that name going to be descriptive? Is it going to be based on actions? Would it make more sense to me if it mimicked JavaScript? And go through and change all of the names of the objects that are brought in so they make more sense to you when you're developing. This also transcends into other aspects of development, because once you get into adding actions and working with variables and such things, it's going to be really important that you're able to properly locate what you're trying to do from your target dropdown in Lectora. So if I'm trying to show an arrow, but I have 7 arrows on the screen, I need to make sure to know exactly what arrow is being triggered when I'm filling out my action properly. And if I were to just leave the normal naming convention, I might not necessarily be able to figure that out. And what ends up happening is you get out of that action, go back into your Title Explorer, start renaming things. And I know I was especially guilty of this when I was starting out. I would actually forget to go back and finish that action. And then I'd go and test my page and be like, oh, what did I do? And you'd have to take a little bit of time to troubleshoot and really figure out what was going on within your course. So it's definitely a great time saver when it comes to making sure that you have that as you're going along, or at least at the very minimum at the end of your page development or before you're going to add actions in. Another great thing to keep into consideration is the layering. And Lectora and Lectora Online do layering a little bit different than other tools that you might be familiar with on the market. Essentially, each structural piece has its own level of layering, and the object directly below that structure, in this case it's a page, and the object directly below that is the main text block for the example that I'm showing on my screen. That is the very, very back. So that is what is going to go towards the back of my layering. And as you progress downwards through your Title Explorer, you progressively get closer to the front. So one of the things that I like to make sure that I'm doing is either picking the location, such as the page that I want an object to go onto, and then also the general area of the layering as well before I actually insert it in. I am totally guilty of not doing that all the time. So one of the things that you can do is to just pause after you've created the page, take a second, evaluate your work, go through your layering, rename objects if necessary, and then move forward to make sure that everything is good and you're not running into any problems. You'll most likely identify them when you're going through and doing a quick spot check, such as in the run mode of Lectora Online, but there are certain circumstances where you might not necessarily understand what's going on until you get it fully published out. So making sure that that layering is set up is really going to be beneficial to you as you're going through and developing. So my recommendations for you is that at the very back, you place items of least importance. Maybe developmental actions such as an action group or a script that needs to be run. You could also have background images or non-clickable items. You're of course going to want to make sure that if you have objects on top of each other, that whatever needs to be at the back is at the back of the layering as well. As you start moving forward, you're going to progressively get more and more interested in what the learner is going to be potentially be doing on that particular screen. So for example, the next layer is going to be things of less importance, but again, some things that you might need, such as additional background images if there's a secondary layering going on, non-clickable items, and text. When you get into the middle part of the screen, this is where you're going to place items of importance, but still things that maybe they're not clicking on or interacting with. So non-clickable items such as text and images. Once you start getting to the front and very front levels, this is really where you're going to want to stack anything that has importance onto the screen that you have going on here today. So on the front, you're going to want to place items that are clickable, such as buttons, menus, audio, and video. So these are things that the person might want to interact with. And at the very front, you're going to want to make sure that you place the most important items. So if there's a specific objective that you're trying to achieve, such as answering a question, granting credit, watching an audio or video, or listening to an audio clip, as well as interacting with buttons and menus, then you're definitely going to want to make sure that you have that going on here as you're going through. And with that being said, I wanted to pose out the question, what's the matter with the layering of this page? As you were going through, I hope a lot of you were going, but that doesn't make any sense. So if you wouldn't mind participating in the questions panel and letting me know what I should be moving around in this particular page and how you would rather see it layered, I'd like to take that opportunity for us to do it here together. So I don't think I've fixed this already. I'm going to go back to color palette and open it up. I have not. Do we have any answers by any chance in the questions panel at this point in time? I'll go ahead and open everything up so that you can see what's going on. Hopefully you have an understanding of what is going on in this page. I used shapes with words inside of them, turned it into a button to show the associated emotion that goes along with each color.
Susan says, I'm not quite sure. I'm brand new at Lectora. Is it better to have the button text below it or above it?
Ha, yay! Susan, even though you are brand new, you are very intelligent. Greatly appreciate your feedback. So I mentioned that clickable items should be on top of your course. So you're going to want to make sure that you move anything to the top layer that the learner would potentially need to interact with. Our red circles are currently towards the back, not the very back, but the back layer of our content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift grab, which is a list grab, all of the colors because they're right in a row, and then I'm going to right or left click down on my mouse and drag all of these to the very, very front. It's a simple and easy fix, but now if this text block were to ever get adjusted in any way, maybe it went too far down or I added additional things on the screen, I am guaranteeing that my circles are going to be able to be interacted with, just with that little bit of layering. I would definitely want to make sure that the actions were set up properly as well. but that is definitely something that you should be paying attention to. So gold star to you, Susan. Greatly appreciate your feedback. All right, so those are beginner or basic items. We're going to go ahead and get into some more intermediate or advanced things that you might want to take into consideration. These are things that might not be on your mind all the time. If you've got a little bit more experience in Lectora, then you might be a little more in tune with some of these items. But one of the things that we really like to recommend is that if 3 or more people say, wow, save it as a library object. And a lot of the things that you'll find in the eLearning Brothers library are going to be created using library objects. In Lectora Online, they're called package files or .pkg. And it's a collection of either a single object or a set of objects. So it can be an entire chapter, a section, a page, or it could be just a simple little image that you have on there. But what you have when you have 3 or more people saying, wow, is I really like the design of this page. I like the way that your thought process worked with instructional design. Maybe you used great instances of graphic design or coding or anything along those lines. So what we suggest that you do is you turn that object into a library object in order to make it reusable to you whenever necessary. So I'm going to pretend that 3 of you on the call have gone through and told me, wow, Jenny, that just opened my eyes to something I've never learned before. If I'm interjecting feelings on you and you're not comfortable with that, I apologize, but we're going to play along with it. Essentially, all you need to do is locate the particular object or set of objects that you're interested in. I'm going to do this particular page, right-click on that object, and then there's an object in the menu called Save as Library Object. And once I do that within Lectora Online, it's going to ask me, do I want to put it into my shared library object? If you have more than one person in your organization for Lectora Online, you can share it with other people that are in your organization for them to be able to reuse and recycle as well. And it's a good idea to make sure that you name this in a way that's going to make the most sense. So I'm just going to call this sample of library object text. There's really not any functionality that's important to me on the screen. I don't have any coding. There's not a simulation or a game that might be of interest to me. So I just want them to know that if you want to use this, this is a sample of library objects text. And then you'll go ahead and save it. It saves within the program. Process is pretty similar in between Lectora Online and our desktop versions. Over on the right-hand side, you have a menu called our Media Library. And if you click on Library Objects, it will open that library object for you, and then you can see all of the different things that you have added. So I have all of these different items in here from various different projects that I've worked on. Here's the sample of the library objects text. I'm going to bring in the welcome back example that we do in our synchronous training. If you'd like to join us for that, it's available for purchase on our website. I'm going to go ahead and import it into this course, just so you can see it's been brought in as a page. The template that I was working on previously was not the same, so there's definitely going to need to be a little bit of movement around on the screen in order to make sure everything shows properly. But really the nice thing and the reason why we chose to share this particular page is because we're toggling the visibility of a welcome and welcome back message based on a conditional action. So it's essentially saying if you've never been here before, show the welcome message, and if you have been here before, show a welcome back. And it's just simple things like that that can allow you to speak directly to the learner at the point in time that they're taking the course in order to make sure that you're sharing with them a relevant conversation to what exactly they have going on the screen.
Hey,
so
Jennifer,
it's a great example to have. Sure.
Sorry, let me jump in here. Can you please explain the shift plus grab action again?
Yeah. So if you want to grab more than one thing within Lectora, I'm going to go no, this page is fine. If you grab the first object that you have, they have to be in line with each other. And then you hold down your shift key and you go to the end of that line of items that you want and click on it. Lectora will grab everything in the middle. And you can do that going upwards or downwards. So as long as you grab first and then last and then last and then first, whichever one, and make sure everything in the middle you want. It's holding down the shift key while you're selecting in the Title Explorer. Any other questions that have come through that I can answer?
No more questions at this time. Thank you.
All right. Yep, not a problem. Yeah, I love that one. It's my personal favorite. A lot of people end up holding down the control key, which is a multi-select, and it allows you to grab everything, but you have to do each one of them individually. The nice thing about the control grab is that it allows you to grab things out of order. So if I was interested in something towards the top layer of my screen and the bottom layer, I can still grab those and move them around as needed. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the next screen that we have. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in run mode really quick. One of the great things that you can also do as well is include characters within your content. And there are characters directly inside of Lectora and Lectora Online, but I highly like to recommend that if you have not already, check out the ones that are in the cutout library for eLearning Brothers. You're going to see a whole bunch of them flashing on your screen. They're going to give you the ability to evoke emotion, familiarity, play around with storylines, or maybe even a narration. They can really promote engagement and memorability, as well as set a tone within your course. So if I'm working with a course material that is medical based, I can go out there and find a doctor, find a patient. If I'm working with a customer that is interested in doing child services, there are children out there as well. And they're in a variety of different poses. You can use them to the best of your ability in order to work within your content. We do have a storyboard ebook that's available through Trivantis, and I know you guys have kind of touched on the topic as well. So if you're interested in any of that, I definitely recommend doing a little bit of excuse me, research or information about storylines and evoking emotion. You can have a peer-to-peer relationship that happens where you take the content and you say, okay, new person, I'm new too. Here are some of the questions that you might potentially be thinking in your head, but I'm going to actually ask them out loud and let's go find the answers. Like, where's the bathroom? And you can actually include that stuff in your onboarding material if you would like. The other example of it is that you can have an expert or somebody that has a higher level of understanding, and that person can guide them through, ask questions that are maybe above the level that you're currently thinking at to get that momentum going in order to understand the topic at more dynamic levels. So definitely take a look at those if you're interested and incorporate them into your content whenever you can. Moving on to the next tip is the fact of using web windows. It worked, woohoo! I wasn't sure if it was gonna work in run mode or if I needed to switch it into a different one. Essentially, a web window is a window that is using an embed code, and it allows you to have a window inside a window. No, Charles, I don't want to chat right now. It gives you the ability to include content within your course that's on the greater web without actually making them navigate away. It reduces the need to have pop-up windows or links within your content, and it allows them to stay focused on what they're currently working on by giving them the resources. So for example, this is the Lectora resources that are available out there as far as the blog goes. So you can go out and since we're working in Lectora Online, we can go through and read about the layouts and tips and webinars that you'll love to see all of the other resources that are available to Lectora. And again, these are all clickable. Depending on what kind of link is on their web page, you might actually end up prompting open another window. So that is something to keep in mind. The nice thing about these as well is that you can customize them once they've been brought into the system, and really make it so that they are showing exactly what you want to. And all you have to do is include the web address into the system. There are other web sources other than web addresses. So this becomes a really dynamic thing that you can include within your content. So if you have local web-based content, typically people know this as your intranet site, or maybe you want to include a page in your title. You can also put a page inside of a page. Google Maps, if you're trying to get them to understand about a particular location, Wikipedia entry, or Google Docs. If you are sharing all of your content via Google Doc, and you are, again, going back to that onboarding idea, and you need them to understand that, you know, here's a form that you need to fill out, or here's for sales, here's a document that goes over our sell sheets and how to use them and where they are. You can link in those Google Docs without actually making them have to go to that physical location. Some of these items, especially like Google Docs, require you to be able to log in if there is a particular security setting to them. So to properly use a company's Google Doc, you would need to make sure that you were logged into Google on your computer. If you are in a gated intranet type of situation at your organization, you would need to make sure that they were assigned in there potentially before the content would actually be able to appear. And you can include that as a prompt on your screen, or just an additional side note or an audio comment, whatever is going to work the best with how you're developing it in order to accomplish that. So lots of great different options. The only downfall to a web window that I'd like to share with you is that if you decide to include anything offline, so you want to publish it out to a file share, you're not planning on putting it into a learning management system, learning records store, not even Form Cloud, all of the objects that are on the insert ribbon in the web objects group are going to require internet access. So this would not be an option for you if you need to play around with offline and online options. So just keep that in mind as you're going through. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this into the next page. And we're going to talk about reserved variables within the system. As soon as I say the word variables, you'll end up seeing a couple people potentially cringe. Don't be scared. Variables are great resources. High-level overview of variables is that they are essentially the containers that you can put information into. You're getting that information from a variety of different sources, depending on what one that you use. So it could be your computer, Lectora, the internet, your learning management system, and those are just to name a couple. There can be other ways that you can bring in variable information as well. You can then turn around and show that information back to your learner using one of my favorite actions in Lectora, which is called change contents, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. So a couple examples that are on the screen is the current date and time. If it's important for me to have the person note the current date and time of the material that they're working with, then I can go ahead and include that in. There's also, this one's not showing, so I'm going to have to show it in a different way. There's also page numbering systems, which allow you to easily show the progression within your course if you want to. The next one that's showing is called a, this one's right. This is the page title. It's up here. Duh. So this is the page title, and that's pulling the name of the page from within Lectora and populating it out on the page for me here today. I was going to say, why is that saying that? But now it makes sense. The other thing that you can include as far as navigation or location within the course is something called breadcrumbs, and breadcrumbs allow you to see the natural progression within Lectora. We give you the ability to have a book metaphor hierarchy within Lectora Online. your course is a book, and your book can be broken down into chapters, sections, subsections, and pages. So in my particular course, I only use chapters and pages in order to group out my content in between the two main sections of beginner and intermediate. So what you're seeing here is my chapter name, space, caret, space, the name of the page. And that'll continue to populate no matter where you put it. This just happens to be the current location. I'm also using one not very commonly used just to show you that there are a bunch out there. This is looking at my operating system and reporting back what type of operating system I'm using, which is Windows 32-bit. So, or not bit, but Windows 32. So that allows me to potentially see what kind of program that they're running, if that's an important information to me. And you can have that appear somewhere in your course if you want to, or if you're working on some type of programming system, you can say, okay, we're going to populate what operating system you're working on, and based on what you get in return, I want you to follow along on that path in order to understand how to properly work with your computer, because not everyone chooses to use the same laptop or desktop at their organization. So let me go ahead and get back into the actual back end of this. So you can see that these are just placeholder text blocks on my screen that are allowing me to show the information. I just use what was auto-populated within Lectora, which is these little auto text notifications. And you can easily insert them in with very little work by using your insert ribbon and going into the add text group, which is the first one over on the left. And you can see here's the date and time, the page title, the page numbering, and the breadcrumb. And then I pulled the platform and did that one manually myself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that one so that we can get into it a little bit deeper. So this is set to show on page show, which is the current loading of the page, to change the contents of objects within Lectora Online. And you can do that to change images, text. You can have two completely different related items, or you can also populate what comes inside of a text block for you by default. So what I'm doing is I'm changing the contents of current view, which is the name of my object in my title explorer because it's named properly and I can find it easy. And I'm using a variable value found within the system. There are reserved variables, which are ones that are provided to you at any given point in time. And you can have ones that are for standard courses, and then there's additional ones that I'll populate when you have SCORM and AICC compliance turned on. So these are the ones for non-SCORM. I can figure out what browser type they're using, current chapter name, date, page ID, page name, section name, time, title name, view, elapsed time, and then we get into the page numbering system, the platform, and your published date. So you can grab all of this information whenever you want, and all you have to do is populate it into an existing text block. If you're worried about slow load times or thin internet connections, you don't have to include the auto text in here if you don't want. Instead, what you can do is just include a blank text block, but what we ask you to do is enter in a space. That space allows you to let the system know this text block is in play, please don't do anything with it. And then once it populates, there's just going to be an extra space at the beginning, and you might need to fiddle around with your text block in order to make sure that that is showing properly. But it becomes a very powerful tool to be able to show that information. You can personalize your content by saying, hello, so-and-so, or you achieved this certificate on such and such date, and really bring in information that's going to be important to your learner, as well as move your e-learning along in a progressive way as well. One of the newer things that have come out with Trivantis recently, and I wanted to just bring to your attention here really quickly, is our Scenario VR tool. And Scenario VR allows for virtual reality development within content realms. So what you can do is you can create a virtual reality course using 360 video and images, and then add additional things on top of it. You can also embed it inside of courses such as Lectora Online and Lectora. The general idea would also work in other authoring tools as well if you're interested. But it's cool because you can play it, you can move it around and see. This is actually Trivantis' offices down in Florida, and the content is related to safety training in the office. I'm just going to exit that out real quick just because I don't want to have the audio keep going. But it allows you to bring in content in new and interesting ways. We do also give you the ability to publish it out directly as a SCORM package if you're interested in not embedding it into a course, as well as hosting it into our Scenario VR Live and mobile area, which gives you access to a large variety of analytics that can be very useful if you're trying to get big data for some of your e-learning content. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Scenario VR already, we recommend that you go ahead and give it a go. It's linked to on our website at trivantis.com, and it's also got its own website at scenariovr.com, and there is a free trial that you can do as well. The last two items that I have on my list are transitions. Transitions can give your course an animated look and feel with very minimal effort. They can be applied to any objects as well as your pages. So you can actually make it look like you're flipping through a book or something just appeared or faded away or got brought in. So if you're trying to go for a Flash look without actually having to incorporate Flash, because it's supposed to die in 2020, sad to your face, you can accomplish that kind of look and feel using Lectora and Lectora Online by just including transitions in and using timed transitions to make it progress in a specific manner. The last thing that I'm going to recommend is towards the end of your process that you consider using one of our other products, which is called ReviewLink. ReviewLink comes for free with each one of our licenses of Lectora Online and the Lectora desktop versions, and it's a review platform. It allows you to upload your content in, and then you can actually combine what the developer and the reviewer are going through. So it makes it easy for you to figure out what exactly you need to change within your content. With Lectora and Lectora Online, we have markup features. With all of any content that you upload, you can associate a priority, a status, an attachment, write a note. There's also mobile and responsive capabilities so that if you need to make sure that it's being tested on multiple phones or tablets, you can incorporate ReviewLink in as well, and it'll actually collect the data as to what kind of device that they're currently on and even what orientation they have their phone or tablet in. And as a reminder, it does work with Lectora and Lectora Online, as well as Storyline 1 and 2 and Captivate 8 and 9. So it can be combined with any of the tools that you have in your tool belt. So with the little bit of time that we have left, I'm more than happy to answer any miscellaneous questions that have come up or to show some development things on the fly that you might be curious about that could help save some time during your development. So feel free to type anything up into the questions panel, and we'll go ahead and get started with that part of the segment.
Jennifer, Tim asks, how can I get access to ReviewLink? What's the best way for Tim to get that?
Yeah, so what we recommend is that if you currently have a license within Lectora, that you go ahead and you create just a whatever course. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything actually that you're working on. And you go through the process of publishing it out by going to your home ribbon and using the publish option and selecting ReviewLink. You'll go through your standard error checking process. There's an issue on my course, which there is always going to be, there's a high TOC that acts upon, okay, it's because I added the Meet Your Trainer page in. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete that out because we don't need it anymore because it was just for my own purposes of showing to you, and then that should make it so that I can publish. If you have never used ReviewLink before, you will be prompted to log in. And you're going to need to provide your information into the system, not necessarily this particular window. I think it's a different one, like a pop-up window, but not this. And that will, if you don't already have an existing account, it'll ask you to create one. And then after you create it, make sure you have your proper login information put in, and then go through the process of publishing into ReviewLink, and that'll automatically connect the two, the license, and make sure that you don't have a trial of ReviewLink essentially going on at the same time.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Janet is asking if you can show how to get the ELB library within Lectora.
Yeah, sure. So the ELB library is over in your media library, which is over on the right-hand side of your screen. You're going to see a tools button, which is green. So hopefully green means go for you. And you'll see all the different things that are associated within your program. And if I'm trying to get into eLearning Brothers, I can go ahead and click in here. I believe I'm already signed in, and I think I have the full-blown package, which is delightful because I definitely use it if you can't tell. And this allows you to go through and pick out different things that you're interested in. So you have your templates, your characters, and your stock assets. I'm going to go ahead and just bring in a stock asset just to make it a little bit easier. Try and find an image or video. Let's add in, what do I want? What do I want? I want a camping. I just went camping over the weekend, and it was delightful. So I'm going to try and find camping. And look, there we go. There's a tent right there. So I'll go ahead and select that one, and then I can tell the system to start downloading, and it'll be brought within, and it's been added in. So if I exit out here, here's my tent, and I can go ahead and work with it on the page as needed. And you do have some of our image editing capabilities within Lectora Online to work with that image if necessary. Otherwise, Lectora Online comes with Pixlr Lincoln, which is an online image editor.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. Just to, I'm going to go ahead and just go and do, I should have probably done this the first time, but for templates and other objects that come in that are Lectora based, as I mentioned, they are going to come in as the package files. So if I download this and I look at it, I'm going to want to find the Lectora Online package file in order to open it up. And that is going to open up a new instance of a course, and I can work with that and everything. But for desktop, you're going to want the template file, and for Lectora Online, you're going to want that package file.
Okay, great. That's a great lead into Charlie's question. He asks, most of these features are the same as in Lectora's downloaded app?
The desktop version, yes. Yep, you're still going to have the capabilities of being able to get into the tools ribbon over on the right-hand side, and it opens up a slide out window, and you can browse through the content that way. You're just going to be working with different file extensions. But the content is pretty much one-to-one comparison with the desktop application.
Okay, great. Susan's got a question. She asks, with shared library objects, if a variable in that object already exists in the course to which you're importing the object, are warnings issued when you import, or do you have to go through a publish process to have the duplications show up? You want me to read that again?
Yeah.
Okay, so with shared library objects, if a variable in that object already exists in the course to which you are importing the object, are warnings issued when you import, or do you have to go through a publish process to have the duplications show up?
I'm assuming since you're worried about duplications that you're talking about user-generated variables. There is 2 different types of variables that are available within the system. Your reserved ones come with the system automatically. Using those over and over and over again are definitely not going to cause errors. The user-generated ones, however, are ones that you're personally using for whatever needs that you might have within your course content. I know that they save from one person to another now. That wasn't always the case, which I love now. That's cool. I don't know if there's a duplication error. That might have to be something that I follow up with our dev team on and get back to Susan in particular via email, or for everybody on the call for that matter. But that I'm not 100% sure on. I'd have to double check with the development team.
Okay, perfect.
Susan, if you can clarify for me what variable you're particularly speaking about, if it's user generated or reserved, or if there's a particular reserved variable that you're concerned about, then if you wouldn't mind sharing that information, that would help me when I go back to them.
Yep, it is. Susan is talking about the user generated.
The user generated, yeah. I don't think you'll get an error. I'm about 60 to 70% sure that you wouldn't, because I don't believe that is something that's ever been brought up before. You can definitely check to see where your variable is being used from your tools ribbon and your variable manager before getting to the publishing. And if I had any in here, it would then show me where it was being used in the different locations within my course, and I'd see if they were all they're all working together or not.
Okay, so that sounds like a great opportunity for maybe a follow-up blog or something along those lines. So Susan, we'll get back to you on that one. Marcos asks, he says, how can I do a gamification piece like a ranking, and how can I work with the values of different users?
So a ranking of your course, there is a couple different options that you could have. You could have a survey at the beginning of your course material that's asking them to, or end, to rank the content, and you could use some of the variables that are within the system existing, such as your questions. For example, I could have them rank or sequence something into a particular order and then specify what order it should be in. And then get feedback that way. You can use the variable that is associated with that question, which is visible in the question creator. In this case, it's question_747, to make alternative decisions based on how they responded. So if the answer does not contain satisfied, then move them into this area. Or if the answer does contain satisfied, move them into this location. So that is one option. If you don't, questions, just a side note, questions outside of a test are considered to be not graded. So they're not going to be included in any testing or LMS data that's transmitted. So you can plop them in whenever, wherever, hide them by not actually showing them that it's a question. By either blanking out the question text or making it the same color as the background. And you can kind of have it blend into the rest of the material. If you don't want to do a question and you just want to collect the information, also on the test and survey ribbon are our form elements, and those allow you to include things that people would interact with most on the web, such as radio buttons, checkboxes, entry field, drop-down list, and list box. So I could have all of my different things on here, and depending on where they answered, I could again use variables based on there's variables associated to each one of these. You can see that on the properties. This one's called radio_752. You can rename these if you would like. And then you can use whatever is put into there as a jumping point into your decision making. And you'll do that with a conditional action. So if they select or change this, I'm going to go to the next chapter, and I can say that if my radio button is not empty, or if my text block, my entry field contains the word something along those lines. You can make those decisions based on any of that information given. There's other ways that you could definitely do it, but those are the quickest and easiest ways to collect information from somebody taking your course.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
We just have a few minutes left, and it looks like we're all kind of caught up on the questions. So at this point, I want to thank everybody for being on this webinar. We really appreciate your participation. We definitely want to thank Jennifer. Your knowledge is priceless when it comes to these types of things. So thank you for taking your time with us.
Not a problem. Happy to be here and glad that I was able to pass along some information. Hopefully you found something interesting and usable.
Great. At this point, we would love to invite everyone to schedule a free demo with our Customizable Courseware product, which is a new product that eLearning Brothers has launched, has templates that are available. I'm sorry, the courseware source files are available within Lectora. You can see that on your screen now. So these are courses that you can take right out of the box and publish them, but standard with ELB, we're going to give you the source files. So what you can do is open those right up in Lectora. If you want to, maybe you need to add a module on a particular safety training that is particular for your company, you can do that. Or maybe you just want to throw in your logo and call it good and export that out, or you don't want to do any of that. These are available off the shelf, ready to go. And again, fully editable within Lectora. So if you'd like to learn more about our customizable courseware, we invite you to give us a call or visit our site. In addition to that, if you'd like to learn more about any of our products, please feel free to call and schedule a demo. We'd love to help you out. Thanks very much. And please feel free to look forward to this recording in just a few days. Have a great day.